Hey there guys, it's Chris here from tipsforlawyers.com and welcome to the Tips for Lawyers show. Today I wanted to talk about really the only guarantee that you've got in your legal career. You're going to stuff up. It is absolutely guaranteed. And I would love to give you, if I could, the 5 steps to not stuffing up or the 7 things you must do after you've stuffed up. But the reality is that there isn't such a thing. And I want this show to be authentic and real. And I want to have an appreciation for the fact that there are some things which are just bad. You're going to have bad days, and some of the worst days you're going to have in your legal career are going to be the ones where you have stuffed something up and you start to get this feeling. And if you felt it, you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't yet, then I look forward to your story of when you get this feeling for yourself, because it really is very difficult to describe. It starts as this nagging suspicion. And frequently you get this nagging suspicion at some horrific time in the middle of the night. 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, you wake up and you think, I didn't do that thing, or I forgot to correct that thing, or I've just sent a privileged document to the other side, or whatever it is that's happened. And it's quite terrible when that happens, because you can do nothing about it at that time. There's been occasions where I have perhaps logged in at 11 o'clock at night or 12 o'clock at night to work to try and check something that's keeping me awake. Some lawyers have notepads next to their bedside table so that they can take notes and get things out of their head, at least onto paper, and then you can start to hopefully get to sleep once you know or have purged those things out of your head. But that doesn't necessarily help in this kind of situation, because there's this gradual dawning. And then what you do, of course, because you're not sure at that point, you're not sure whether you've actually stuffed up yet, but you think you might have. And then, of course, you're going to go and you're going to find out, have you actually stuffed up? And you're going to search through your files, you're going to look at your file notes, you're going to check your time entries, you're going to look at what was sent and what wasn't, or whatever. You're going to check the deadlines, you're going to read the practice direction to see whether you've missed something. Whatever it's going to be, that's probably going to be the first thing you do. There's a pretty good chance you're going to skip breakfast. There's a pretty good chance you're going to skip your morning coffee, and you're going to race into work at the earliest available opportunity. You're going to go to your desk and you're going to try and find the answer without giving this impression that you're freaking out just yet to anyone around you. So by now, some of you are going, I've done that. I know exactly what you're talking about. And others of you are going, I'm not totally sure about this, Chris. And the reason is, of course, that within the overall realm of stuffing up, there is a scale, isn't there? On the one hand, you might stuff up because you forgot to put a full stop at the end of a sentence, or you called someone Ms. instead of Mr., or you got their name wrong, or there was a typo in your letter. These sort of things that are mildly embarrassing, potentially, if anyone even notices them, but by and large are going to have no negative impact. Somewhere in the middle, of course, are things that are a bit beyond embarrassing and might be actual errors, but these are ones that can be corrected, perhaps, by sending a further letter, because nothing has actually happened that has rested upon them. So maybe they are correctable, and you're going to get a wrist slapping from your boss, who may or may not have picked it up themselves, but ultimately, beyond a bit of embarrassment and probably a little bit of argy-bargy, there's a reasonable chance that nothing will in fact go horrifically wrong. That's in the middle of the spectrum. And then, of course, at the worst end of the spectrum are the things that have happened about which you can do absolutely nothing. The bird has flown the coop. The thing has already gone wrong. And you see this, of course, in the stories that you get, people who have missed timelines and then are unable to claw the things back together in conveyancing, people who have missed limitation period dates, for example, and are unable to commence proceedings, things like that. And of course, sometimes they go horribly badly. Sometimes these mistakes actually don't cause any real damage to anyone. And sometimes they do. And sometimes those people know about it and sometimes they don't, and sometimes they care and sometimes they don't. And as part of our overall look at this 100% guarantee for your legal career of stuffing up in some way, I think it's really important to acknowledge that that is probably going to happen at some point. We try to tell ourselves that with a certain amount of diligence and a certain amount of attention that we will never ever stuff up, but the reality is you're probably going to. And most often this isn't actually on a legal issue. Sometimes it is, but often this is actually on other things. It's because you were busy. It's because you forgot to do something. It's because the calendar system failed. It's because you forgot to put a bring update. Whatever it might be, these are often the issues that come up that have resulted in the error in the first place. And so with that in mind, what do? We get to the office, we see how bad the mistake is. And that feeling in our stomach either alleviates because we've realized that the error is not so bad as we first thought, or perhaps it's easily remediable, but perhaps we get to this point that we have realized it's an unfixable error. And look, I would love to have for you, the 3-step strategy to avoiding ever making a mistake, or the 7 things you must do after you realize you've made a horrific error. But the fact is there is no such thing. There is no nifty list post that I can do. There is no handy set of tips to guide you through how to manage the situation, because I think having an appreciation for just how bad you're going to feel is worthwhile. And I think it's actually a valuable emotion to feel as well, because I think it's that emotional response that tells you that you're invested in your career. Because what you can start to do is you can start to say, why am I freaking out as much as I am? Why am I upset? Is it because I maintain a high standard of professionalism and I don't like the fact that an error occurred in my life? Is it because I'm worried about being fired? Is it because I'm not confident in my job enough just yet, or just at the moment, that this kind of error could really be the starting point for a series of disasters in that space? Maybe it's because you're worried about getting sued. Maybe it's because you're worried about the ramifications. But this worry is going to start to come in, and you're going to play through all the scenarios, and you're going to do a million things. And no matter what I say, you're going to do those things anyway. So I could tell you not to worry. And that would be both hypocritical, because I have worried about these things, and it would probably be pointless, because you are going to worry. You're going to worry about what's going to happen, and you're going to go through the ramifications, and you're going to have the conversations in your head. You're going to cross-examine yourself. You're going to say, how did this occur? Was it actually my fault? Was it someone else's fault? Did someone tell you to do the wrong thing? If so, how do you demonstrate that? Did your boss tell you to do the wrong thing and now they're flip-flopping? Maybe that's an issue. But hopefully, what you're going to come to is a realization that this is a process that you are going to have to work through. And it's one of the guaranteed things that comes along with the guarantee that you're going to stuff up, which is that you're going to have to deal with it at some point in your own life. And so really all I wanted to do as part of this episode is to encourage you in one area, and that's your integrity. Because along with the 100% guarantee of stuff up comes a choice as to how you respond to the stuff up. What do you do? Are you going to take responsibility for it, if indeed it was your responsibility? Are you going to try desperately to make it someone else's fault? Are you going to find a scapegoat? They're always handy. Maybe that person who's gone, it can be their fault. Maybe the junior lawyer, can be their fault. Maybe the clerk didn't do the research right. Whatever it is. Maybe you're going to try and find a scapegoat. Is it going to be your boss's fault for not adequately supervising you? Maybe that's something you can rest upon. But within all of those possible options, and some of them may be true, you've got to ask yourself, am I doing this out of a sense of integrity, or am I doing this out of a sense of escapism? Am I not prepared to accept the fact that I might have stuffed up? And that's a really difficult question to ask yourself, because you are going to go through all these options, but how you react to the realization that you've stuffed something up is the most important character trait that comes along with this issue. And it's character traits that really tell you whether you're cut out to be a lawyer or not. The fact that you stuffed up does not inherently mean that you're not cut out to be a lawyer. And it will be easy for you to tell yourself that. I've stuffed this up. Oh, can I really even get through this at all? You know, am I going to come out the other end, or should I just pack it all in and go and serve cocktails on a Friday night or something like that? Whatever you might be telling yourself, don't internalize automatically the fact that you've stuffed up as a gross character or suitability issue. However, how you react is a character issue, and that does determine whether you're fit for practice. Are you going to be open about the situation? Are you going to take the hit? Because sometimes you need to. I'm not saying you need to throw yourself under a bus in terms of your professional career. What I'm saying is you need to accept your role, and you need to be open and honest about your role in the error that occurred. Because normally errors of at least a significant magnitude are not ones which stemmed from a particular individual thing. They're often complex, they're often subtle, they're often made up of a number of different factors. There might be different reasonings and rationales and issues that have arisen. So within all of that, you have a choice. You have a choice to maintain your integrity or not. And so often what we see in those horror stories is not the error, but the tale of what happened after the error. Someone made a bad decision and they took money out of the trust account that belonged to someone else and they paid it into their mortgage because they were late on their payments, because they were struggling, because their kids were in school or whatever. But then that person wanted their money out of the trust account and it wasn't there anymore, of course. So what the person did was, rather than front up, they took someone else's trust money to pay back the first person. And then to pay back the second person, they took the third person's trust money. And so all the ledgers became doctored differently. And as you can see, the initial error, the initial poor decision, the initial thing that went wrong was compounded grossly. And that betrays a character problem. That you succumbed to the fear of someone realizing that you had stuffed up. Now, other examples. When you're called upon to deliver the bad news, how are you going to deliver the bad news? Do you deliver the bad news? Do you hope that it will go away? Do you not tell anyone? Do you really have an obligation to tell anyone? That's what you'll be asking yourself. Is this something that needs to be disclosed or not? And your gut, your conscience, your reaction will give you the right answer. And if you find yourself desperately trying to find a way out, then you already know that you've got a pretty good idea of what the answer is. So when you stuff up, and you will, and it's not something that you can necessarily fix, or it's something that's going to be more than a little embarrassing, or it's something that you really need to address, and these things are going to happen. None of us are perfect. None of us are even close to perfect. We try and maintain a profile of risk management, but you are going to stuff something up at some point. That is the nature of humanity. That is the nature of being a person in a high-pressure practice. But how you react is really what makes a lawyer or not. And so I want to encourage you today, maintain your integrity. Don't internalize necessarily. It might involve a bit of soul searching, but don't internalize the mistake. How you react is what determines whether you should stay in the profession or otherwise. So today in the comments, what I want you to do is I want you to share your story. How did you react when you stuffed something up? What did you do? What was your gut reaction? How did you feel? Did you get that tension in the pit of your stomach, like I'm talking about? Did you get that feeling of absolutely futileness, which isn't a word? Did you get the feeling that you couldn't possibly do anything to fix the mistake, and at that point it just dawned on you? You realized that you had to come clean, you had to disclose to someone, you had to get help, you had to figure out what to do in response to it. How did you look to maintain your integrity? Or how did you not look, if you're prepared to share that? Let us know your story in the comments, because I think there's a lot of young lawyers who've yet to feel this real issue of a mistake beyond minor embarrassment, because they're subject to such rigorous guidance and supervision. But as you go on, you are going to stuff something up. It's going to happen. And so how are you going to react to it? Some stories would help. So let us know in the comments your story of your stuff up without disclosing anything untoward as part of it. That's the end of the show. As always, I value your subscriptions, I value your comments, I value your feedback. So head to tipsforlawyers.com/iTunes if you're listening on the podcast, and tipsforlawyers.com/YouTube if you're watching the YouTube video, and subscribe, leave a comment, leave a thumbs up, leave something positive. I do enjoy your comments, and I look forward to seeing you next time.